But first of all, we wanted to have Kelly Semrau, who's the EVP of Corporate Affairs, Communications, and Sustainability. She's a lot under her remit and has been involved in sustainable business and sustainable leadership for many decades. And she'll talk to us about purpose and leadership and trust and initiate the conversation, and then we'll come back in a few minutes to have a broader panel conversation. So Kelly, please come on up.
Thank you, Chris. I'm so excited to be here today. We're going to have a great panel, but I want to tell you a little about SC Johnson, our purpose, and our journey. But before I do that, just like Christine, on a personal note, I just have to say I was deeply saddened by what happened a short distance from here, but London is resilient, London rocks, and I'm so glad we're here today. Your kind invitation brings me all the way from the great state of Wisconsin. All right, somebody from Wisconsin, all right. All right. I'm really fortunate to work for a great American company. It's got a great story. We were founded in 1886, and to put that into perspective, SC Johnson opened for business at the same year when construction began on the London Tower Bridge. That's quite a while to maintain the confidence and trust of consumers. And if our enterprise has held up as well as the bridge, we like to think the reason is the same. It all comes down to the integrity of the foundation. From the beginning and right up to this very day, the foundation for SC Johnson is our identity as a family company with all the latitude that affords. Our CEO, Fitz Johnson, works every day surrounded by reminders of each predecessor going back to his great-great-grandfather. In our headquarters town of Racine, we walk the same streets that were familiar to SC Johnson employees generations ago. It shapes your whole approach to the world. Your name doesn't have to be Johnson to make you feel protective of a reputation built by the effort, vision, and character of others. Every old company has a spirit of its own and bits of wisdom that get passed along. For us, it's the words of Herbert Fitz Johnson, who ran the enterprise a century ago. He observed that, quote, "The goodwill of people is the only enduring thing in business. The rest is shadow." As business mottos go, for 100 years ago, that's not too bad. We could do a whole lot worse. So many of the catchphrases in business today, image, brand loyalty, relationship building, CSR, are captured in that sturdy old word, goodwill. And it doesn't come any easier today than it ever did. If anything, nowadays, the goodwill of consumers is easier to lose. In all the ways that consumers form a basic impression of a company, they need to know that you act by the standards you profess, that you are who you say you are, mislead them even once, or even shade the truth, and a company can count itself lucky to get a second chance. So that's the basic ethos of our company. We're a familiar brand with an established reputation and a quite personal sense of responsibility. But our industry, by its very nature, puts us right at the center of some very modern concerns. We make chemical products. And not only that, but chemical products that families use in their homes. I bet every one of you might have one of our products in your home. Our consumers need to know that these products are completely safe. We deal in complex science that can invite suspicion and misinterpretation, and we are ready with the answers. We have large factories. More than ever, we are expected to manage those plants responsibly and sustainably. So how do we handle those challenges? The short answer is that we try not to be too clever about it. We deal with these issues as straightforwardly and openly as possible. Take chemical ingredients, for example. Long before consumers were questioning the ingredients in household products, we recognized a responsibility to disclose. We disclose every ingredient in every product, regardless of whether we're required by law to do so. That was the decision of our CEO, and it came in an email to me that could not have been simpler. He simply said, do it. Today, if anyone wants to know what's in our products and why, all the details are on our website. And to their credit, other companies have begun to do the same. Unilever and RB are excellent cases in point. They agree with us that if customer trust is the goal, only a policy of complete transparency will get you there. Likewise, in the selection of ingredients, we take the precautionary approach. We used to have what we called the brown list of chemicals that were legal to use, and many companies use them, but they didn't meet our safety standards. That gave way to our current green list, which rates chemicals according to their human safety and environmental impact. We're constantly reviewing, testing, and updating that list. And the crucial thing is that we never waited. We are doing more than any regulation in any country. Does that all involve extra time, cost, and occasional inconvenience? You bet it does. But the green list sends a signal to consumers, to potential critics, to all concerned. It shows that we are a company with serious safety standards, a company with nothing to conceal, a company worthy of trust. As for environmental sustainability, we tell an important story around our company that actually concerns the British market. Back in the early 70s, we had an antiperspirant that sold here in the UK, more than any other antiperspirant. The problem was it had CFCs, and the risks were just becoming clear. In short order, we stopped using CFCs even before they were banned. No buying time, no agonizing. Our fourth generation CEO, Sam Johnson, just made the call, and that was that. The losses could be counted in short-term market share. We lost the brand completely, but the gains could be counted in long-term goodwill. It's that way so often with sustainability issues. Our model these days has to center on the ethically alert consumer. As purchasers, they want to be responsible, and they ask for the same of us as producers. If our standards, our respect for the environment, and our sense of social purpose don't square with theirs, consumers will take their business elsewhere. That's how a free market works, and we should see it as the opportunity it is. We're a better company because we've reduced emissions by more than half since the year 2000, and manufacturing waste by much more than that. Globally, a third of all of our electric energy is renewable, and at our manufacturing site in Holland, our largest site outside the US, we are 100% renewable electricity, and we send no waste to landfills at all. But it's not just about reducing the impact of our operations. Today, this morning, we are announcing the achievement of a meaningful goal in partnership with Conservation International. We are helping save the rainforest in the Amazon. Over the last 15 years, we have helped support the protection of more than 100,000 acres of the Amazon. And to continue that support, in March of this year, we launched an acre for acre matching challenge to encourage the public to preserve 10,000 acres. You're among the first in the world to learn that in 2 short months, we met that goal. Most every company represented here has great progress of its own to cite. It has taken resourcefulness, ingenuity, and a better use of technology, and it is all to the good. It's smart practice by any measure, and by the measures that conscientious people apply today in their product choices, going that extra mile is absolutely essential. I'm really interested to hear about my fellow panelists, what they have to say, what they're doing, and I want to save time for our conversation. So here's the basic takeaway. In the 130-year experience of the SC Johnson, a family company, Whenever any course of action seems plainly the right thing to do, that settles the business question. What's at stake is a loss of trust, and in business, that's the ultimate risk. When information is rationed or withheld, people tend to assume the worst, understandably so. Transparency is a great quality in people, and it's a great quality in corporations. It has rewards of its own in public confidence and respect. None of this means that every call will be easy or that we don't make mistakes. There's always a balancing of interests and risks, and I'm certainly not here with all the answers, which may be the reason I'm not up here alone. So why don't we turn back to Chris and let's start our discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kelly. That was a wonderful way to kick us off. Why don't Jeff and Julian come on up, and we'll introduce Jeff and Julian in a second. First of all, what kind of questions do you want to ask? What do you want to know from these three interesting, varied companies? Just shout out a few questions. We're not going to address them right now, but we'll have it percolate in the back of our heads.
How do you value long-term goodwill?
Long-term goodwill, how do we value it? Excellent question. How about this side? Someone over here. David, you've got 3 or 4 I know, already teed up, but a question. What do you want to know from these folks?
I suppose, what's the greatest mistake that the company has made that you've learned from in the last 2 or 3 years?
Excellent. Learn from failures. Very good. Another question. Yes?
Inspired by the introduction there, what's the toughest trade-offs and how do you make decisions where someone's going to be perhaps lower priority? You've got to make a trade-off.
Fantastic. Toughest trade-off. Very difficult decisions. And on this side, yes, in the very back over there.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to know what a fair profit looks like.
A fair profit. Good question. That's a tough one. It'll take a couple hours, but it's a good question. Yes. Yeah.
With the Edelman Trust Barometer that we've all been taking a look at, it's kind of at an all-time low. So it's not just business, it's governments, it's NGOs. So I think we have a really big opportunity to use that as a way to advance our own corporates and grow our businesses in an interesting way. So interesting to see how you use trust as a go-to-market strategy.
Trust as a go-to-market strategy. Great. That's a wonderful line of questioning, and we'll begin and dig in right now and come back to the audience in a few minutes. So we've heard from Kelly. We learned about her background. Let me introduce Julian briefly. Julian Hilton-Johnson runs corporate relations and public policy globally for McDonald's. He's been with the company for how long?
18 years.
18 years. So deep into a challenging, exciting, dynamic industry. And Jeff Hogue is the Chief Sustainability Officer at Cna, an apparel company that has been around for how many years?
176 years.
107, the old man up on the panel, 176 years. Kelly referenced that SC Johnson, 131 years, and the new kid on the block is only 60 years
Yeah,
old.
absolutely. Yeah. It's a new way of looking at it, yeah.
So we have this fantastic, I think, window. We'll hope we get a window into these different sectors and different types of companies. And maybe, Julian, we can kick off with you just to get your perspective on how do you understand trust? Why is it important? How do you value it, et cetera?
Crikey, how long have we got? Trust is important to different businesses in different ways. And it's very difficult to define, I think. But in essence, it's about people's beliefs as to truth or reliability. I mean, and we could spend the whole day talking about that. Actually, I think because of that, though, in some ways, trust is quite an unhelpful term. It's a very important concept because just about anything you do could potentially be related to trust as an organization. And because of that, you can spread yourself too thinly, you can focus on the wrong things. So I personally like to think more about reputation, because that helps me to segment it by the people that are most important, by audiences, and then to think much more about risk and opportunity. And if you start talking about risk and opportunity as well, it becomes much easier to embed the whole concept into the business overall. And one of the big challenges that I think people that have worked in the trust arena can face, and this isn't a comment about McDonald's, it's a general comment, is that somehow it can be seen as something apart. It can be seen as something that's done by a different function. And if it's not led from the top and embedded into your strategy, into your ways of working, and into your operations, then it simply isn't going to work. And if you think about McDonald's, I mean, we have, I lose track of the exact number, if you'll forgive me, sort of round about 38,000 restaurants around the world. With our franchisees, we have 1.9 million employees. 70 million people walk through our doors on a daily basis. And every action that happens in a restaurant is going to affect our most important audiences on a daily basis. So we have to have the whole concept of trust and reputation embedded right the way from the top down to everyone in our restaurants, which is why we spend so much time on our training programs. Our training programs are probably in the region of 10 times more intensive. We give 10 times as much training as our sector average, and we're very, very selective in the way that we look at our franchisees. You know, a very, very small proportion of people who apply to be McDonald's franchisees become franchisees, and an important part of that is that they need to have an understanding of why trust and reputation is important.
And the focus on reputation as potentially a more useful frame from your perspective. And the one question that related to the trade-offs. I mean, does reputation and risk help us make better decisions given the trade-offs?
It's a very, very good question. And I'm not sure I can answer it directly. But I mean, I think trade-offs are important because every action carries with it a consequence. And one of the most challenging things to do is to actually map out how trust or reputation works, because most things that you do are going to be interconnected. And, you know, interconnected in terms of topic, interconnected in terms of audiences, interconnected in terms of effect. So having a clear idea of the value of a particular action or a lack of action, and will at least help you to prioritize and also to understand those other impacts. And that's easy to say, of course. In practice, it's hard to do because you're dealing with so many things that are outside your control, but also so many things that are in many ways quite intangible. Yeah.
And Jeff, how does CNA, or how do you interpret trust within a CNA context? What's your sense of that?
Well, I mean, going back to what we just talked about in terms of, you know, being in a business for 176 years. This is a company where, you know, 6 generations of families shopped at, and there's a very strong connection with the brand. And so, you know, when it comes down to trust for us, of course, you know, it's about managing risk, as Julian mentioned, but I think it's also, you know, about the promise that we have to the customer and the relationships that we build with the customer. I mean, we're a retail brand, so, you know, within our company, the connection of our employees and staff members towards the customer is really important. And it's really important for us to, the whole entire company to own trust in the same way so that we can empower staff to deliver. And by the way, I used to work for McDonald's, so about 3 years ago. And you know what Julian is mentioning here, I think is also what when I worked for McDonald's, I took into this company in terms of prioritizing risk, prioritizing the trade-offs, helping leadership to understand what the risks are of addressing things in certain ways as opposed to other ways. And I think McDonald's is actually quite good at that from my experience.
And it can be a challenge in a very big international company, because inevitably risk differs and opportunity differs not only by topic but by region as well. And there can be very, you know, we know that different parts of the world work in different ways, and we like to talk about Europe as one, amalgamated mass, rather topical, I know, now in the UK. But of course, that's not even the case either. And if you look particularly at food, McDonald's is a food company, the whole concept of cuisine will vary markedly, and expectations of consumers as well as other stakeholders is going to vary enormously. And trying to work out how you can do the best overall job and what the trade-offs are is an ongoing daily challenge.
And Kelly, you referenced goodwill and purpose and leadership, but how is trust as a concept viewed within SC Johnson? Has it changed in the last number of years?
You know, I am so fortunate because I work for Fitz Johnson, the chairman and the owner of the company. And in this 5-year business strategy, trust, being the most trusted company in our space, is one of the 6 business objectives. So at the very top, it's part of our business strategy. and he is after it. We're pulling on 4 levers. We, of course, make incredibly safe and products that work. We are transparent. We do a lot in transparency. We lead. We love to disrupt. We've just done a disruptive move, and I love it when our competitors get angry at us. That makes me feel good. And the third thing is we're going to go after marketing claims. There's so much greenwashing in our space that absolutely dilutes trust by consumers. We're going to go after that. We're going to go after marketing claims. And then, of course, we are just underpinned for 131 years because it's in the DNA of the Johnson family for environmental, social types of projects.
I'd love to know what the disruptive references that you referred to recently, but also this connection given the kind of products you sell. There's a conversation around science and trust and consumer engagement that's a problem that's complicated. I mean, how are you approaching?
Exceedingly complicated because you have the rise of natural companies, and we own natural companies. We own Mrs. Meyer's, we own Baby Organics, but the rise of natural companies is a great event in our space. But consumers believe that naturals are not chemicals. Water's a chemical, lemon's a chemical. And it's an interesting dialogue because we're having to teach the world a little bit about chemistry. So it's a very complex way in which we engage, but we've chosen to do it on a transparent platform where you can look and see what every 26-syllable ingredient is, what it means, what we use it for, and also all those ingredients that we don't use. We don't use more than 1,500 chemicals that are totally legal and our competitive set, or even maybe some of the natural companies use. So we really like to compare and contrast ourselves. So I keep saying if we could have 15 minutes with every consumer in the world, we could teach them about science. That's my goal, 15 minutes.
That's a lot of time.
Good luck with that.
Can I just tag on
Yeah,
that?
of course, Julian.
You use the term greenwashing, and I think you're touching on something that's really, really
We're
important.
getting after it.
Yeah, good. I'll stay out of the way. If you think of the way that a lot of companies operate, and clearly what they want to do is to be bold and to move fast. And those of you who are following the Lucy Kellaway's column in the FT last year will remember a very sad incident with a company that will remain nameless about moving fast and claims that were made by their chief executive. But it is very funny if you go and look at the FT. But there is a natural conflict. And there can be sometimes a tendency for companies with all the best intentions and all the best beliefs. So it's not about being disingenuous, going out and wanting to make claims, because that's how they move fast and that's how they move bold. And we've learned the hard way from many years ago that actually the process itself has to be very carefully thought through and very carefully sequenced so that you have a clear understanding of many things, probably too many to mention here, but what are your key customer groups thinking about this? So for example, with McDonald's, we may have, and we do have, some great programs around, for example, energy reduction and greenhouse gases. But actually, if what our customers are most concerned about is the litter from McDonald's in the street, that's fine. It's a bit like HR having a great people strategy, but forgetting to pay people. You have
Does this happen?
No. I should put that in very, very clearly. That has never happened. But the point is you have to have an in-depth of understanding of what the key motivators are for your key audiences and to address those as well as sometimes the much bigger programs. You have to be able to explain them in a way that addresses both the reality and the perceptions, because very often sentiment is driven as much by perception as it is by reality. And you have to talk about things in a way that is in tune with how people feel. And we did this, for example, years ago in McDonald's, where we wanted to take the McJob issue head on. We wanted to tackle it head on because we felt it was fundamentally unfair. And there's a great deal I can say about that. But our tagline back then, which was about 2006 in the UK, was "not bad for a McJob." And we didn't feel that at that time we could go out and talk about how great McDonald's shops were. We do feel that now, but at that time the image was such that we felt that it was more in tune with the way that people they would be more receptive to what we were saying if we talked about it in that way. But the key thing is, you have this sequence, and what comes last is the marketing. And that's the key. The marketing has to come a very long way down to when you've actually done a lot of the work and you have some credibility, both externally as well as, of course, internally.
And on that point, I mean, Jeff, we were talking earlier this morning around the initiative you launched on the Cradle to Cradle t-shirt and how that, very complex and how it's sort of received sometimes. But do you want to just sort of describe that as a part of the conversation lately at CNA?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're talking about is the holy grail of sustainability, really. I mean, it's how do you take a very complex and a topic that, you know, is very scientific in nature and translate it into consumer connection point where they can actually understand what it is, they can understand all the benefits, and it doesn't get oversimplified. And I think that, you know, with this particular scenario that you're talking about here, we just launched the first gold Cradle to Cradle certified t-shirts, or a couple of different styles of t-shirts at scale in the world. And this is really building upon our leadership in organic cotton. We're the largest buyer of organic cotton on the planet as well. And we figured that, you know, we needed to take organic cotton to the next level. And as you can imagine, you know, being a retailer and really focusing on margins, you know, it's a really tricky thing to sell into the company. But I think that, you know, going back to what I mentioned before with, you know, how do you build trust with consumers? I think it's really something that was in our values as a company and something that, you know, management realized that, you know, if we aim to be a leader, we need to take some risks. And we need to move things in a direction and not only do it for ourselves as a company to build our brand and build trust against our brand, but also to offer it to the world. And part of the development of that particular product was to give the roadmap to all other companies free of charge, open source, so that they could figure out how to do the same thing, all the way down to the materials, the production processes, that type of thing. And what's interesting about that, and I think, you know, part of this trust equation for us is that, you know, it's kind of weird to think that you can compete on sustainability aspects. I just, in my mind, I can't get my head around competing on reducing environmental impact or creating better communities for people. I mean, we should all be doing that, right? We should all be in compliance with laws and those types of things. We can't compete on these things. So I think in general, you know, the trust equation for us is really how do we catalyze the industry, put our chips on the table, put the risk on the table, and say, okay, we're going to take this step, and we hope that other people come with us, but we're going to take it forward, and it's not going to be we were talking about greenwashing. It's not pilot washing. It's not a pilot. It's a large-scale thing that we plan to roll out and to expand over time.
And it sounds like the disruption, I think, that you were referring to, that you've done, and trying to move the industry in some sort of way, and really, irregardless of the short-term sort of impacts or focus. And which disruption have you done lately? What's the latest trouble you've caused?
Last week or the week before, we at SCJ we announced that there are actually 368 skin allergens in our product. The EU says there's 26. The fragrance houses, we buy a lot of fragrance from the fragrance houses, and Firmenich is going to be here today. They're one of our fragrance houses. And they know that there's more skin allergens. So NGOs started putting pressure on us to label the 26 skin allergens. And I went to my boss, the chairman and CEO, and I said, that just doesn't have integrity because people know it's more. And he just said, once again, go ahead and do it. So we really had to work hard with our supply chain because we had to renegotiate every contract with our fragrance house to be able to disclose that. So what we like to do is we like to do those disruptive leadership moves. And while, in the beginning, people are calling me going, Kelly, why are you doing this? Kelly, you're ruining the industry. I think that's full of integrity. And if a consumer has a child that might have an allergy to vanilla, and if vanilla is in a cleaner, why not tell that mom that? So that's just our perspective. So we like to disrupt in those ways, but we like to do it for what we think is the right thing to do.
Let's go to the audience with questions. David's question, I think we've addressed, and so any brave people want to talk about failures and what you've learned from a trust perspective on failures, and then we'll grab a couple more questions.
I'll put one on the table. I think, going back to what I said previously about trying to translate sustainability attributes into something that's consumer facing and that consumers can connect with. I think as sustainability professionals, for some reason, we know a lot of big words. We know all the technical aspects of a lot of things. And one of the things that I've learned over my career is that we've got to let that go, and we've got to talk to consumers how they would like to be talked to. As I mentioned before, we've been a leader in organic cotton. And organic cotton is really a non-GMO source of cotton that uses no pesticides, no synthetic fertilizers, less water, and you could go even one level deeper and say that its greenhouse global warming potential is 46% less than conventional cotton. And when we're in the stores, sometimes we try to articulate all of those points in a way that the consumer is often confused. And what we've learned through consumer research is that the customers don't necessarily want to know all the details. In fact, that I think even in the McDonald's times, we were told that providing a lot of data without that consumers don't understand what the data means can often confuse and add to less trust. What we've decided to do is really focus on the emotive stories and how we're changing people's lives in the supply chain. And if there is a need to talk about all those technical details, we can do that, but it's not the leading message. It's really tricky, though, because I think that sometimes there's a tendency to oversimplify, and then you get criticism for oversimplifying when you had a really strong technical basis and position to do what you're doing. And so there is a balance. I think, again, I go back to what I said before. This is the holy grail of sustainability. If we can translate these very technical things into consumer-facing messages that connect with consumers, that they understand the benefit for themselves, they understand the spatially separated benefits to the workers in India and Bangladesh and Myanmar and Cambodia, that would be a real win. We haven't figured that one out yet, actually.
I'd love to talk about a real live failure that turned into goodwill. So we have lots of brands: Raid, Glade, Ziploc, Drano, Toilet Duck, Mrs. Meyer's, Baby Ganex. We have about 200 different brands around the world. One of those brands is Saran Wrap. In the United States, it's that stretchy cling plastic wrap. And the ingredient that makes it stretchy and plastic, when it's incinerated, it creates dioxins. So Fisk said, take it out. He gave the brand team 2 years to take it out and still be able to have a solution where it's stretchy and it clings. That's the whole brand promise of Saran Wrap. In 2 years, the brand team could not do it, the R&D could not do it, and he let that brand slide. We took it out because we prioritize health issues, and dioxins are not good for the environment or for health, so we prioritize those. Now, one of the questions is, how do you do trade-offs? And you have to do trade-offs because you can't let every brand slide. Saran Wrap today doesn't cling. Our competitors still clings. Well, that's because they have the ingredient that creates dioxins. The CEO and I sleep a hell of a lot better at night, knowing that even though we lost that brand, we still have it, but it doesn't work. But we talk about it, and we talk about it, and we talk about how brave that is, because leadership is about courage. But once again, you've got to prioritize, because you can't lose every brand. So it's a tricky trade-off, but we prioritize human health and health of the planet, and we will walk away from things that our competitors don't.
And it's a great case study. It's an HBR written up case study that Fisk wrote, which is fantastic. Yeah, Julian.
I agree with all the
Any mistakes in McDonald's 60 years ever? Is this possible?
I'm actually going to come on to that in a moment. But I think the consumers piece is very important. And so, for example, some of the ways in which we address food quality is to open up our supply chain to vloggers. You know, young people who certainly don't speak in the way that I might choose to speak. And obviously you have to let the reins go. Yeah. There is some risk associated with that. But ultimately, they're able to speak about the things that are important to our customers in a way that our customers understand. You know, we've done things with virtual reality as well, so people can tour farms and processing sites. And there are a couple of things I wanted to say, and it was mentioned earlier on. The first thing is expectations and trust obviously evolves over time. And what was most important, or perhaps even not very important, a little while ago can become increasingly important. And if you look at a subject which has been a very hot topic in the UK, 0 hours contracts. McDonald's has a fundamental belief that there is nothing inherently wrong with 0 hours contracts. What can be wrong is the way in which they are operated by some people. And we believe that we operate them very, very responsibly. However, we've looked at this, and having surveyed our staff, the overwhelming majority, more than 80%, want to stay on 0 hours contracts, but a limited number have asked if they can go on to fixed hours contracts, mainly if they want to get credit, if they want to get a mortgage, and that's something that we're bringing in. So we've looked at this, even though we have a belief in 0 hours contracts being operated responsibly and giving people the flexibility they want, but this has moved on, the debate has moved on, and we've listened to our employees. The other thing is to admit when you get something's wrong. And you know, we're all very big companies, and sometimes just standing up and saying, I'm sorry, we understand, we've learned from this. We did this recently where one of our commercials in the UK was not received in the way that had been intended. And you know, we pulled it within a day and made it very clear that we would learn from the experience. So you're never too big to say sorry and to show some humility.
And that vulnerability definitely builds trust in occasion. One burning question. Who's got a burning question? And we'll go through in rapid fire for the three folks. Yes, quick hand up. Yeah. Great.
Yes.
Jeff, go. Yes. Quick.
Yeah, I mean,
quick. 30 seconds each. Yeah.
Yeah. We've recognized that if we try to tell the story ourselves, often it gets lost and it is mistrusted. So aligning with third-party, credible, peer-reviewed standards and partnering with certain organizations, NGOs, international labor unions, those types of things have been helpful in demonstrating that what we're saying is credible, but also to serve as a sounding board and a kind of a thought partner that is critical, that will push us to achieve even more than we could just on our own.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and sometimes it's within NGOs, such as Greenpeace in the case of McDonald's. Sometimes it can be through external bodies such as the football associations, the 4 football associations of the UK, where we have community football projects. It can be through external, what you might call accreditation or awards bodies, such as Great Places to Work, but absolutely understanding their perspectives, working with them, sometimes in partnership, can be very important, not only and that it can help drive motivation and trust internally as well as externally. And obviously, having that close working relationship allows for a much more intimate exchange of ideas and opinions, which ultimately can be beneficial for everyone.
Yes, we believe all of those are stakeholders and that they deserve to have a comment on our business and help us solve issues. So we look at them as a pure stakeholder that has a right to ask us questions. We partner, and at SCJ, every employee believes that we must make the world a better place because we're here. So that's our ethos. So yes.
Wonderful. We have coffee, now a coffee break. Please join me in warmly thanking Jeff, Julian, and Kelly.